What's up, guys? So in my last video I said that I was planning on doing a real-time sharpening video, meaning no cuts in the entire video. Well, this is that video. If you don't like long format rambling on videos where a whole lot is talked about but not a lot is actually said, this is probably not the video for you. Check out some of my other videos though on the YouTube channel, because I have some short to the point videos that sort of address exactly what we're doing here. But some of you have expressed an interest in seeing real-time sharpening, and I have the perfect candidate right here. Before we get started, in my last video, which was actually, some of that was actually filmed yesterday, it was like 80 degrees outside. Today, it's in the 40s. So literally a 40-degree drop overnight. It's insane. Anyway, the candidate that I have here that needs to be sharpened is the good old Spyderco Manix 2, right? Gotta think about this for a second. This still has the chips in it from the last video. There's a chip here, and there's a tiny chip. It's the bevel is so small I really can't hardly see it with my naked eye. Oh, there's a tiny chip up here. So there's two chips that I got to get out. Pretty much come to the conclusion that 8 thousandths behind the edge is a little bit too thin for, obviously that's too thin for an EDC knife. It's okay for, you know, a chef's knife or something where you're cutting onions or potatoes or whatever, but for an EDC knife where this thing's running to staples and, you know, cut baler twine from around, you know, mower blades, 8 thousandths behind the edge is not a good option. So what I'm going to do here with this knife is actually grind the chips out on the stone, and then I'll just go ahead and put a new secondary bevel on it and continue the sharpening. I got a cut in there. Anyway. Okay. So maybe this video is not going to go completely without cuts, because sometimes, you know, I lose my train of thought. So the stone that I'm going to be using is the Spyderco CBN stone. I wanted to talk real quick about this stone. These, you know, I haven't checked, so don't quote me on this. I haven't checked recently on the availability of these, but these were actually really hard to get. So much so that when they first came out, I bought this one and wanted to do some testing on it to potentially review on the channel, and I ended up having problems where I couldn't get them. I couldn't buy them really anywhere. Spyderco didn't have them available. They weren't available for me to buy in bulk quantities and so on and so forth. And they're still, at least I checked maybe a month or two ago, they're still kind of hard to get. Maybe that's changed. Maybe that has to do with the supply chain issue. I don't know. Maybe they're discontinuing these. I've been using this one for the better part of a year now, off and on. I've kind of intermixed it with, you know, some of my own stones and the DMT stones. So it has a decent amount of use on it, and it seems to be holding up pretty well. Don't ask me the grit on this, because I don't know off the top of my head. It's basically just a coarse and a fine. It's a CBN stone, cubic boron nitrate, I think that's what it is, and it's not a diamond stone, but it cuts s110v, and that's really all that matters. So the first thing I'm going to do is grind out these chips. So it's a pretty straightforward process. I don't waste a whole bunch of time going back and forth on the stone until the chips are gone. I just go straight ahead and grind out the chips with the knife kind of vertical on the stone. So because this is so thin behind the edge, it's not going to take real long to grind out these chips. Like I said, this is a really unpleasant sound. It's kind of hard to talk during this because it's such an unpleasant noise. I might even have to mute this portion. So you can take your fingernail and just kind of drag it up the edge. Because again, I mean, 8/1000ths behind the edge, which is still what this is at. It's 2 pieces of printer paper. That's how thin 8/1000ths is. So kind of difficult to see exactly what's going on, but you can use your fingernail, carefully drag it up the edge and see if you feel any nicks in the blade. Got a little bit more to go. So this is going to end up being a little bit thicker than 8/1000ths behind the edge, because essentially what we've done at this point is we've ground down to the 8/1000ths. Now we're going to put another bevel on it, and that is going to bring the bevel farther up the blade, which will increase the behind the edge thickness slightly. I don't know to what, because I don't know what that's going to be yet, but I guess we'll find out when we're done sharpening. Couple more passes, and I think we'll be good. All right, I think we got both of those chips out. So it really doesn't take that long. I like to keep a paper towel next to me, just kind of wipe the blade down. So now I'm just going to go ahead and start grinding a secondary bevel back onto this. Now, if you saw the last video where we talked about edge geometry, thickness behind the edge, this right here is what I was using to slice that onion. So this is a completely squared off edge, as you obviously saw. You know, me literally squaring it off on a stone. This is the condition that the knife was in when we were slicing the onion and cutting the pine stick that I had, the pine 2x4. So 8/1000ths behind the edge is stupid thin. It's way too thin for an EDC knife. But you know, we might end up at 10 or 12/1000ths by the time we're done here, and that might still be too thin. What I do know is that 30/1000ths is way too thick. So somewhere in between there is our sweet spot. I'm just going to start grinding in, there's a little spider, grinding in the secondary bevel. This is kind of difficult because this is not my normal sharpening setup. Just do a couple passes to sort of set that bevel, get the muscle memory going. I like to take my finger and put it right on the tip of the blade, and when my finger starts scraping the stone, I know I'm at the tip, and that way I don't end up overshooting the stone and sliding off the end of the stone. Most of the times it works, sometimes it doesn't. So I think we might be good on that side. I'm going to go ahead and switch sides. Using the rule of thumb to establish the angle on this side. A lot of people ask about pressure. I would say I'm applying medium pressure. I'm not just super bearing down on the stone, and I'm not just lightly gliding it on the stone either. I'm putting enough pressure to feel what I'm doing. I think too many people get caught up in the whole pressure aspect, and it's a little bit more important when we're talking about aluminum oxide stones. versus, you know, a flat diamond plate stone like this. In my opinion, these are a little bit more forgiving in terms of pressure than the aluminum oxide. You really have to be careful with any aluminum oxide stone. Pressure is really important with those stones. You don't want to apply too much pressure or you end up digging into the stone and causing all sorts of problems. But I really don't use those stones anymore. These are pretty much the only things that I use. So I'm really kind of out of practice with those anyway, and I probably shouldn't be talking about it. I know some people do like the aluminum oxides. That's fine, I guess. For me, they are just way too much work in order to get started with them. Actually, we're really close to being apexed here, so this happens super quick. But the aluminum oxide stones, see what I did there? I just went off the edge of the stone. The aluminum oxide stones are, they're just, you know, they require soaking in water. They're kind of delicate. They're fragile. Your pressure has to be really exact. They're just kind of unforgiving to use. They're messy to use. I just don't like them. Some people, I'm not some people. I just don't like them. Probably gonna get hate comments for it. Oh, well, you haven't tried such and such stone. No, and I really don't care to, because the whole water thing is just not, like, I'm not using any water on these stones, and you just don't need it. Don't need any water. They're not messy. So we're pretty much apexed here. Sometimes it's hard to tell. And sometimes you can be apexed here. Sometimes you can be apexed here. And you may not be apexed in the middle. It just depends on the curvature of the blade, how you're holding the knife on the stone, whether the knife is rocking back and forth on the stone as you sharpen, etc. So you really have to pay attention to your bevels, especially the bevel sizes. You're not going to be able to see it through the camera here, but I'm really paying attention to the bevel size on each side. A lot of people ask, how do you know when it's time to switch sides? Just look at the bevels. If you have a giant bevel on one side and a tiny bevel on the other, then focus, turn that knife, set that tiny bevel on the stone, and sharpen it some more until those bevels are even. So try and match the bevel sizes from side to side, and that's kind of how you know when to switch sides. You can do this after you apex. So what I would do, and what I normally do, is sort of do an equal amount on both sides. And I really just do this by feel. I don't count, count strokes or anything, but I just do it by feel, an equal amount on both sides. I kind of look at my bevel size and say, well, we're apex, so it doesn't matter what I do from here. I look at the smaller bevel. I might take that back to the stone for a couple of passes to even the bevel sizes out, and then I'm good. I'm apexed, my bevels are even, and that's all that really matters. So we're going to go back, do a couple more passes here on this side. We'll check out these bevels. And these diamond or CBN stones, they cut really fast, especially when you're talking about, a blade that's this thin. A couple passes goes a long way. And that kind of looks a little better. And I'm fairly confident that we're apexed all the way through. But if you're in doubt, just get your strop and strop it. Now remember, this is right off of the coarsest grit. I mean, this is like a reprofiling grit. That's how coarse it is. I would say it's probably the equivalent of a DMT coarse. Whatever that may be. give it a couple passes on the strop. And this is pretty sharp. We might have one spot towards the tip. Maybe not. Might have one little tiny spot towards the tip that needs a little bit of work here. Now, if you're having trouble removing a burr on a strop, one trick that you can do on the stone, and I just sort of do it out of habit, is once you're pretty sure that you've apexed, take the knife and just do a couple progressively lighter passes on the stone. So that would be considered a light pass. That's light pass, and alternate back and forth. And this will really help reduce the burr size that you're dealing with. All right, we're pretty much apexed everywhere, and I'm gonna go ahead and flip it over to the fine side. See how long are we? We're at 17 minutes, holy crap. I hope you guys like long form content. This video is gonna be an hour long by the time we're done. So on the fine side, we've already apexed, so all we're doing at this point is refining this scratch pattern. And again, I'm asked all the time, how do you know when you're done and ready to move on to the next grit? Just look at the edge. If you still see some coarse scratches on that secondary bevel, the bevel that's being sharpened, then go back and work it longer on the stone that you're on. And it really should not take a long time to refine these this bevel with progressively finer and finer stones. Because we're not removing material. Well, technically we are removing material, but we're not removing hardly any material. All we're doing is removing the previous scratch pattern that was left by the last coarsest stone. Sharpening and talking is kind of like patting your head and rubbing your belly at the same time. The brain's only large enough for one at a time. So I'm doing the same alternating technique here, just trying to minimize the burr as much as possible. And that looks really good. So this is a 6 micron diamond strop. Stropping is pretty straightforward. I strop at the same angle that I've sharpened at, or approximately. It doesn't have to be exact. The leather that I've been using on these strops is extremely stiff. This leather is cowhide. It's from a cow, and it's a very, very high quality leather. It's very thick, but there's not a lot of give to it, meaning that it's not squishy. It's very firm. It's actually, for us, it's one of the most expensive, or for me, it's really the most expensive leather that you can buy, where I buy it from. So one of the questions I've gotten as well is, can you strop too much? I think you can if you're not careful with your angle. Meaning that if you're all willy-nilly, floppy-woppy on the stroppy, then you can strop too much. You end up rounding over the edge. You end up lifting that knife into the strop and rounding over the edge, and you're going to be like, what the heck happened? I had a good edge and now it's gone. Well, you rounded it over on the strop. The nice thing about these diamond strops is, and I'm really probably stropping too much here as I'm rambling on. I mean, that feels really nice. Is that the diamond cuts really fast. This is not an aluminum oxide. It's not an aluminum oxide strop. Aluminum oxide doesn't really cut that fast, especially in the harder, higher end steels. And it also, aluminum oxide wears out really quickly. So it's like you apply your aluminum oxide, your green compound, you use it a couple of times, and it's like it progressively gets worse and worse. Then you got to reapply it, and then you use it, and it's great for like a day, and then it kind of disintegrates. You know, the aluminum oxide particles, they break down into smaller and smaller pieces, and that's why it just doesn't, it degrades in its effectiveness. Whereas a diamond strop, the diamonds don't break down. They stay exactly the same size all the time. So you pretty much get the same performance out of it for a very, very long time. I have heard people say that they load up with material, and you can see the black on the strops. That is material being removed, but the amount of material that's being removed from a strop is so minimal. It doesn't really impede the strop's effectiveness. It's, you know, at this point, I don't even use aluminum oxide, and I know some people like it, and I've sold it on the website for people who just tend to like it better than diamond. Oh yeah, that's looking really nice. You know, some people don't want to spend the, however much a diamond compound costs and say, oh, it's such a tiny amount. Well, that tiny amount will last years if you use it properly. To give you an idea, I've loaded this strop twice in 2 years, and I've done a lot of stropping with it. You've seen the strop on the YouTube channel a bunch of times. I mean, I've done a lot of stropping with it, and it's still working fine. I've actually just recently reloaded it, maybe a couple months ago, and I don't think I'm gonna have to reload it again based on my sharpening for probably another year. So if it's loaded properly, and by properly, you don't have to, or I should say, and by properly, I mean that you don't want to put too much on this. If you put too much on, you're just going to be wasting it. It's going to flake off and not be very good. But just a quick couple words on the strop. Go ahead and clean the blade. And that's pretty much all that I do. I'm pretty much done my sharpening. I mean, this thing is just, this thing is so sharp. I don't know if it's going to cut like this or not. Oh, it does cut like that. Look at that. Sometimes, look at that. That's just, that is nice. Just kind of lightly. This isn't a real refined, kind of sawing through it, but it's not a super refined edge. I don't know if this will whittle hair. Sometimes you can get a 6 micron to whittle hair if you're really particular with it, but usually whittling a hair requires down to a 1 micron. But I have whittled with 6 micron before if you catch it just right. But this is a really nice toothy working edge here. Look how clean that is. Just nice. Oh, let me get my, oh, here they are. Let's see what the thickness behind the edge is here now that we've reprofiled it. I'm not going to be able to do this with the camera. I'll try to. Or I'm not going to be able to show you exactly in real time. So right now we're looking at about 11th thou. There it is, right there. See if I can lock it down. 11 thousandths behind the edge. We're gonna try this out, see how it works. This is still 1/3 of the thickness of the original bevel one here. I think that this is going to be much better than 8 thousandths. Sometimes adding just a degree or two to a bevel can increase apex stability. I've seen this a lot with Scandi ground knives. Sometimes you'll get a particular steel and it'll you put like say an 11 degree per side angle on it, and it'll be rolly, it'll be chippy, or whatever it is. You increase that to 12 degrees per side and you end up with a completely different blade. All those rolls and chips go away and you end up with a really nice cutting apex. So 1 degree can make a difference. So sometimes, you know, maybe even adding a couple of thousandths can mean the difference between an apex that just chips right off at everything it sees and one that holds stable, depending upon what you're doing, obviously. Anyway, I think I could sit here and ramble on all night about this. And we've already been going for almost 30 minutes, which is ridiculous. Feels like I've been sitting here for 5. But yeah, talking and sharpening is not my strong suit. So just leave you with that. Anyway, if you have any questions or comments, concerns, thoughts that you don't really want to share with anybody else, leave them in the comments below. And I look forward to reading them. See you in the next video.